Okay, can I say welcome to everyone? And we've got a number of members of the public along today as well. So welcome to you as well. I was going to ask Michelle, have we got any apologies? We had one apology, but I can see Beth online, so she's certainly there. And I don't think we've had any others. No, we haven't. So that's great. Are there any disclosures of any interests at all? Okay.
A personal interest in item number 9 on the agenda.
Yeah, Councillor Will Thomas, as you know, I'm not on this committee. However, I'm here as an observer, so I do have a personal interest. I'm a governor of Newton Primary School, and I do have children in the authority school as well. Thanks.
Hello, Councillor Angela O'Connor, and personal interest in governor one of the schools in the ward, and also that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great, fine, thanks. And could I say as well, I have spoken to a couple of the people who are coming in to raise concerns, but not beyond that.
Sorry, Lyndon. Sorry, Lyndon. Just want to mention the fact that I'm on the admissions panel. I don't know if it requires a formal declaration, but just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware.
Okay, any others online? No, it's just Mike.
Fine as well.
The prohibition of whip votes, we know that. And can I now go through the minutes? Now there are 3 sets of minutes. And the first one are the minutes from June, and then we have September and October. And I'm pretty sure you'll have all read them all in advance. So are there any questions or things that you think are not right? Let me know, let us know. Any hands up? No. Can I then have a proposer that they be accepted? That's Francesca. And seconder, Councillor Mike Day and Sue Jones. Okay, great, fine, thank you. We then have letters as well for you to note, and there are 3 sets of letters from June, September and October as well. And has anybody got any comments on those, although they've been passed by you all? No, great, fine, thank you. There we go, let's have this away. We've now got a public question time. And if before we go into that, could I say the item that they refer to is the school admissions policy, and with everybody's indulgence, I'd like to bring that forward to item number 7, so immediately after the public question, so we can deal with that, so that members of the public can then go. Alternatively, we know how exciting the meeting is, and I'm sure they want to stay to the end. But either way, it's up to you. So if everybody is okay with that, I'm looking online. Nobody objects, so that's fine. Right, we now have 10 minutes in public questions, and we've got a number on that we received. I think we've received them. Do you want to come along and read the questions out? Do what you want to do, or you just will? Yeah, great. There we go. And if you could say your name.
Yes, hi, my name's Gareth Field, and thank you very much for having us here, and also the work the Education Department has done thus far in looking at our concerns. So just a background to my situation is we have had a child who we applied to attend to our local school. It's our nearest school. It's less than a mile away. We walk to school. She was fortunate and got admitted straight away, no problem. that was great. We then had a subsequent child, nothing had changed. They were in the same house. She was refused a place from the school and offered an alternative place at another school sort of much further away that we could no longer walk to. When we looked into it, that school couldn't definitely guarantee our first daughter moving there. So basically we were faced with the options of either separating our children to 2 different primary schools. They were at that age 4 and 6 years old, or removing our eldest daughter and moving to another school, which was 3 miles away, that they could both attend. We started the appeal process, and very fortunately, due to pure luck and movement in numbers, our second daughter did get admitted to the school. But during the process, we basically looked into the oversubscription criteria, and this is where we found a concern that we felt perhaps wasn't treating families sort of as well as it could be. So with the current school admissions policy, when a school is oversubscribed and all applicants live within the catchment area, no consideration is given to the presence of any elder siblings or any attendance at the school. Places are simply allocated on distance from that school, and we were, I think, 22 metres further away than, so we're talking tiny distances, not large distances. So this gives no protection to the family unit or consideration of the devastating impact that the decision has upon the older sibling already in attendance at the school. This policy forces primary school age siblings to either be separated and sent to different schools, or more likely, the elder sibling who is settled, happy, has got a friendship group, teacher relationships, they're forced to move school, which is, for our child, would have been devastating. She was eventually settled where she was, but moving school would have been devastating for her. But that was the option that the education department gave us, and that was where we were. These children are 5, 10 years old, and it's just so upsetting for them. It's also completely unnecessary. If an amendment was made to give priority to children living in catchment with a sibling in attendance over those with no sibling in attendance, then the council have done some work to say that the total number of children declined a place would be identical. It would not change. There would be no increase, no decrease. However, the true number of children impacted would be significantly less, because they're not counting for the siblings that are affected by the current policy. So every child that's declined a place, there's a sibling involved as well, at least one sibling, possibly 2. So that true number of children affected is actually higher. And those children that are affected, the older siblings, they're the ones that are really affected. And that's what I don't think this policy looks for or protects. So as I said, so that's that. So my question really is, so the other thing I'd like to say is, when we were going through the appeals procedure, we became a little bit obsessed because of the upset that we were facing. It was really traumatic to the family, and we started researching, and it came to light that Swansea and Neath are the only 2 local authorities in all of Wales and all of England that have this policy that separates siblings. All 20 other local authorities in Wales and 317 in England, and that was a lot of internet time we spent looking at that, do prioritise siblings in attendance. So another very brief thing to throw in, if you look through the subscription criteria and you start considering children out of catchment, so if a school is oversubscribed and you go as far through as children out of catchment, those children with a sibling take priority over those without a sibling. So within Swansea's current policy, if you don't live in catchment, a sibling is prioritised. If you do live in catchment, a sibling is not prioritised. To me, that's just really unfair, and it would have been devastating to our family. So my question is, during the review of this policy, what consideration has been given to the hugely negative impact it has upon the older siblings in attendance at the school and the wider family? The Education Department have made an assessment of the number of children that would be affected, and they report it as identical. So if the total number of children declined a place is identical, has the impact of this decision been considered? Has an impact assessment been made on the 2 different cohorts of children potentially affected, i.e. those with siblings and those without siblings? And has the level of distress and risk to the education of these 2 groups been compared? Thank you very much for your time. I've got lots of other parents with a view, so thank you.
Thank you. My name is Eleanor Field, wife of husband who just spoken. I think my point then is just following on from what Gareth said, as you can see from him, that it was obviously a very difficult time for us having to deal with that, the separation potentially of our children, particularly when we moved to the house we moved to, because it was in the catchment area of that school. So just to be clear, we are in the catchment area. we chose that school accordingly, and then because of where the school's situation is, that there's a high population of houses very close to the school, it meant that we were then denied a place, even though our elder sibling was had a place already. So I suppose if I'm just from a mum point of view, asking the panel, you know, as many of you are parents and grandparents, to put yourselves in our position, especially when you know it's unique to Swansea, is when you consider the children and you take a common sense approach to this, a family orientated approach, which, you know, hopefully Swansea is trying to get that approach. Do you not agree that if a family lives within the catchment area of a school and their eldest child is already in the school and has been offered a place already, then providing that family don't move and they remain within the catchment area, subsequent siblings should then be given priority to attend the same school? It just makes, it's common sense. So this would obviously keep the family unit together, because I was faced at doing multiple drop-offs. You know, the schools start and finish at the same time. So I'm talking about then having to take one child to school, throw them out the door effectively, and then run to the next school. Then means I've got no idea of how they're getting on. I can't then have that same parent-teacher relationship because I can't actually spend any time with them. I can't actually then ensure that they're having good relationships with their peers because I can't then ensure that. And so it's hugely detrimental, causes massive distress to the family, but also puts huge distress on the children, because effectively then they don't have the same education experience. Because particularly when our children get home, they're like, oh, what happened in school? This happened in school. But if you're in different schools, it's a completely different experience. So for us, you know, that causes huge distress on the children. It's just completely unavoidable, and is avoidable. And it just doesn't seem an unreasonable request to me. Obviously, I've been affected, to change this policy so we can be more in line with the rest of Wales and the rest of the UK. It's something that could be easily changed, but it's within your power if you would do it. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Mark Lloyd. Just carrying on from what Gareth and Ellie have spoken about, we were affected also 2 years ago living in catchment. Our son didn't get into the local school, but now we have a sibling the same age and coming in. We are extremely concerned with the numbers of that particular school year, that we are going to be in the same position that, or a few of us are potentially, and with now we've got the older sibling, I think the situation and the effect it'll have on them is astronomical, because again, it's either 2 school runs or you take a extremely settled child out of school. And as Gareth mentioned, not only is it just the one child, you're also affecting 2 or 3 in each instance. So yeah, it's and also if the sort of class is full on admission, that'd be, you know, obviously sibling would be to be effect instead of distance. And yeah, there you go. That's
Great, fine.
Thank
you. You couldn't. Is anybody else speaking? Otherwise, all right, there we go. Otherwise.
Hello, my name's Sue Lewis. I've got invested interest, and really to say that the knock-on effect isn't just the one family, it comes to the grandparents as well, and the running round and everything else. They can now walk to school, whereas they won't be able to. It's too dangerous in both directions to other schools. There's not footpaths completely to the other places. So the knock-on effect isn't just the one unit, it's 3 generations. So I would love it to be reconsidered. Thank you.
Fine, thank you. On this matter, we've also received a number of letters in which have been noted. As you know, we're not a decision-making body. That's the cabinet and the council. But obviously, thank you for those thoughts. What we will do now is to move, if you like, onto the briefing. Or do you want to answer those questions, or do you want to go straight onto the briefing and then take questions?
Well, I think it's
from
up
the
to
panel?
you, Chair. I mean, I'm happy to discuss the report now and then hopefully we'll address the questions as we go through the report. If the questioners are happy with that.
Does that, yeah, I think that, so what we will now do is that I'm asking the cabinet member and director and so on to go through the report. And obviously the panel then can ask questions afterwards, and hopefully that may address some of your concerns as well. So on that note, I'd like to welcome Councillor Robert Smith, the Cabinet Member for Education, and Helen Morgan-Rees, Director of Education, and Kate Phillips, who will be taking this item. So I don't know which one of you wants to come in first.
Yeah, as usual, I'll just introduce the item and perhaps I'll come in afterwards, Chair, just to thank the officers for their work in preparing the report, and also the Admissions Forum for the work that they've done, and perhaps we'll come to that and the discussions that they've had that has informed this afternoon's the report that's being discussed this afternoon. Can I be clear that we're not dismissing concerns and the issues that have been raised this afternoon? Yes, they're certainly valid. This isn't a matter that we're ignoring. It's a matter of how we allocate places, and the context has to be the broader work, the right school, right places work that's going on to make sure that we have the right supply of school places in the right area. We don't want any families inconvenienced. We don't want any families split, and we don't want whether they are families with siblings or families living by a school. So I know that it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other there, and that's why that piece of work. I know. So the robot Hoover. Well, I've never been heckled by a robot before, let alone a robot Hoover. It looks more like it's more like a Dalek than a Hoover. Yeah, but no, to come back to the serious point, that's why that piece of work that the officers are involved with to ensure the right number of places in each catchment area is what we need to be aiming at. But I think in terms of this afternoon's discussion, I think, Kate, you're going to lead us through the report, and then perhaps we can have a discussion at the end, Chair.
Great, thanks, Robert. Helen, do you want to...
Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. I fully endorse and approve the report that's in front of you today, so no further comment from myself.
Kate, down to you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so if it's okay, and what I'll do is go through the report first, and then we've got prepared answers to the questions that were submitted in advance, and I can provide additional information in relation to the supplementary comments, if that's okay. So
the panel will probably have some questions as well.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so if I talk through the report in the first instance, obviously we were asked to report to Scrutiny panel, performance panel on the school admissions arrangements, including a recent review. So in terms of the background, the council has a legal responsibility for determining the admission arrangements for all our maintained schools, and the legislative framework is outlined in that report. The school admission arrangements for 2025 to 2026 can be found in the appendices, and that's there for you to look at. So Swansea Council have also established an independent, experienced and quorate admissions forum, and that's the statutory forum that has the responsibility for ensuring that our admission arrangements are in place, that they're fair, equitable, and providing a vehicle for admission authorities and other interested parties to scrutinise the effectiveness of admission arrangements, consider how to deal with difficult issues, and to advise on admission authorities on the way in which their arrangements can be improved. So as an admission authority, Swansea Council pays due regard to any advice offered by the forum. So the forum does that real kind of exploratory work and then takes those recommendations through to Swansea Council. So the admission forum in Swansea has got a key role in ensuring fair admission system that does not disadvantage one child compared to another, and is straightforward and easy for parents to understand. So forums are responsible for monitoring compliance with the Welsh Government Admissions Code 2013's key document that they have to comply with. Our arrangements are reviewed annually, and this process is set out in the Welsh Government Code and is fully complied with by Swansea Council. We have a very thorough process every year. Should there be no significant changes, then the arrangements are reviewed by the Admission Forum prior to consultation with all Swansea LA maintained schools, with Swansea voluntary aided schools, with chairs and clerks to governors, and with neighbouring local authorities. The consultation period each year runs from December to January, and following the completion of the consultation process, the local authority must then determine the admission arrangements by the 15th of April in the determination year. So to meet the requirements of the legislation and the code, the agreed arrangements are then reported to council, and that's usually at a meeting in March, and they can then determine the arrangements to take forward. If there were a significant change to admission arrangements proposed, then the local authority would need to take a full consultation process. So that is with parents of all children likely to be affected, which is effectively every family living in Swansea, not just those in school, but obviously parents of children who are attending preschool provisions, and indeed any family likely to move into the area. So in terms of the current position for school admissions, the admission team represents the admitting body for Swansea Council, and that team processes over 8,000 admission applications per year. So approximately 5,000 of those applications are made in admission rounds for what we call the year of entry. So that's entry to reception, entry to year 7, and also to our nursery classes. And each application is processed in accordance with the admission arrangements. On top of that, we also have what we call mid-year admissions. So that's applications for children looking to change school during the middle of the year, a mid-year transfer. So Swansea Council complies with all the legal requirements, and we've always consulted with our statutory consultees on an annual basis since we've been required to do so for many, many years. Throughout this time, and from a total of 94 schools, all but one primary school, which was in last year's consultation, have felt overwhelmingly that the arrangements are fair and that they work well for Swansea. So what this means is that 99.3% of the schools representing our pupil population currently consider that our arrangements are fair to all. In addition to this, we have a high rate of meeting parental preferences. So that's between 97 and 98% year on year. In the Welsh Government guidance and indeed our policy in Swansea, parental preference is the overriding factor in terms of admission arrangements. So this high first preference rate indicates that our arrangements are effective for the vast majority of families. In any arrangements dealing with such a high volume and where there are pressures on places, so as Councillor Smith has outlined some of the challenges around right schools in right places, we recognise that there will always be a very small number of refusals, but our admission appeals process, an independent appeals process, allows for these cases to have further consideration, which is completely independent from the original decision making. And we also operate waiting lists, and we know particularly in years of entry, there's quite a lot of movement because parents will apply speculatively sometimes for places, and also, you know, particularly for families with younger children, they're often in a position where they're moving house. We see that quite often. So the waiting lists often are effective in securing places. Details of our admission appeals by school and by outcome are published every year. So that's in the public domain. It's in our information for parents booklet, and you can see details of appeal numbers and success rates for every school in Swansea going back for many, many years. So unusually in the consultation from the 2024 admission arrangements, there was an objection from a statutory consultee. So that was a single primary school. And given that this objection had followed a 100% agreement rate for many years, it was quite an unusual occurrence. So we considered it was really important to give a very thorough consideration to this objection. And in addition to this, a parent whose child attended the same school had written to state that they felt that the criteria was unfair. Their child had not been offered a place at their preferred school at the time, although they were subsequently offered their preferred school in line with the oversubscription criteria when a place became available on the waiting list. So while parents are not statutory consultees, their comments are still given really detailed consideration by the forum, and the details of this consideration and the findings of the consultation are outlined in the report to March Council 24. So we took these findings to the Council in March as part of our recommendation for agreement for the arrangements, and we've put that report in as a supplementary document. The key points to give you an overview of that report were to inform the Council of the statutory process undertaken by the Admissions Forum, to ensure that the Council have all the information relating to the current admission arrangements, to advise them that the arrangements remain fair and equitable, to highlight any consultee, statutory or otherwise, who felt the current arrangements are unfair, to provide a full and thorough report to enable Council to determine the arrangements for the local authority. And then the report also addressed the specific issues raised during the consultation process and the justification for the proposal to retain the current arrangements, as the changes proposed in line with the suggestion that was made would disadvantage other applicants. So the message from the March 24 report was that the Admissions Forum had considered the statutory objections, and that they wanted, from the statutory consultees, and that they wanted to retain the current arrangements. This report was considered by Council in March 24. However, following further representations to Council from the same member of the public who had submitted the letter regarding the arrangements, Council requested a further review. So this is consideration of a letter by the Admissions Forum, further representation in relation to the same issue from the same individual in the Council meeting, and that then led to a request for a further review. So the Admissions Forum undertook the additional review to ensure that they were satisfied that the arrangements, and specifically the oversubscription criteria, which was the element that was queried, remain equitable. And despite, as I said, the parent not being a statutory consultee, the forum still felt that it was really appropriate that those views were considered. So the additional consideration by the Admissions Forum included potential scenarios and outcomes which would have occurred should the oversubscription criteria be amended to that which was being suggested. And that the criteria that was being suggested was that there was an additional criteria of children with a sibling living in catchment having priority. The forum also considered additional data in relation to previous admission rounds, and also the outcome of meetings with colleagues in other local authorities. So one of the comments in the correspondence was around other authorities having this criteria in place, and Swansea being somewhat unique in that. So conversations took place with other local authorities to understand what the implications of that were. And again, this is all detailed in the report, but the findings were that levels of refusal were really the same, with just different groups of children being impacted. So the report was compiled for consideration in December. So the ask of Council in March was that we went back to them, and that's what's going to happen in December. And that outlines the issues raised and the findings of the Admission Forum. And again, that full report is submitted as an appendices, as Appendix E. It hasn't been put onto our forward look for Council yet, and we may have some minor amendments depending on some of our discussions today. The Admissions Forum key findings following scrutiny of historical data and the analysis of current practice are detailed below. So I'll just share those findings with you. So the forum concluded that the data analysis confirms that instances of refusal using our long-standing arrangements during admission rounds are extremely low. So the following information is important to note. Instances of sibling refusal in catchment are very, very low. They're extremely low. Data confirmed that each admission round deals with over 5,000 applications per annum. So in 6 years, that's approximately 30,000 applications. Only 5 applications have been refused when a child was living in a catchment area. So that equates to 0.016. And of those 5 catchment refusals, only 3 of those children had siblings also attending the school. So that's 0.01% of our refusals were for children with siblings in catchment. Over the last 6 years, this anomaly occurred in 2 years only, in 2021 and in 2023, and it's occurred as a standalone incident in 2 different primary schools. There have been no catchment refusals for September 24. In 2023, 2 out of the 3 refusals were subsequently offered their first choice school due to pupil movement, and this is, as explained earlier, quite a usual occurrence that our waiting list is implemented. So while we recognise initial refusals are upsetting, the admissions team do work tirelessly to match as many children as possible to their first choice school. That's absolutely our overwhelming desire when we're managing admission arrangements. So we believe that this data evidences the current arrangements work effectively for the vast majority of families living in catchment and wishing siblings to attend the same school. The data in Appendix B shows that the highest level of refusal occurs when parents apply for a school outside of their catchment. So we recognise parental right to choose a school place for children, and we provide support and guidance for all parents choosing schools outside their catchment area. But without doubt, the biggest issues in terms of refusal occur when people apply from outside of a catchment area. So the Forum consider that the Council are fully compliant with the admission code, and we are identical to our closest neighbouring authority. Additionally, officers have consulted with other local authorities in Wales during national meetings and understand that instances of in-catchment refusal and appeals, including that of the sibling criteria, are equal or higher in other local authorities. And given this new information, the Forum therefore concluded that our arrangements are best suited to local need. And important to note that these arrangements have to work for Swansea. Swansea is a unique area with a unique demographic. The Forum continues to exercise fairness to all parents and recognise it's difficult to have multiple criteria to satisfy all parents and families in all circumstances. So the Welsh Government School Admission Code provides guidance and examples of good practice for its oversubscription criteria that are fair to all families and their children. And it states it is possible for a criterion to be fair in some circumstances and not in others. It is for admissions authorities acting in accordance with the provisions and guidelines in this code to decide which criteria they will use and in what circumstances. So members of the Forum wish to highlight that the local authority process up to 8,000 admission applications annually, and they consider the criteria as fair and equitable, with over 97% of first-rate applications met in the admission rounds, which is similar or higher than other local authorities. This is coupled with the data from our schools, which shows that all but one are currently in agreement with the arrangements are fair. The Forum have therefore concluded they are equitable and they are suitable. The Forum agrees that the independent appeal process, which can add consideration and weighting to family circumstances, provides a further option for those cases to be considered. And in conclusion, therefore, the Forum feels that the current admission arrangements and criteria are equitable for all families. It's important, I think, to draw your attention to our Information for Parents booklet, which is produced every year and revised every year. It provides really important supplementary information and guidance for all applicants, and all applicants must sign to confirm they've read the document before they apply for a school place. Amongst the detailed guidance, it contains important information confirming that no particular scenario guarantees a place in a preferred school. So, for example, being in a catchment or having a sibling attending. In addition, we include some important definitions around how the Council defines siblings for the purpose of school admissions. And this booklet is reviewed every year, as I said, to ensure that the guidance is as clear and relevant as possible. We also complete an integrated impact assessment every year for Council to consider before they determine and approve the arrangements. And the IIA for the current admission arrangements has been assessed as low risk to all communities. If a full consultation is required in relation to a change to the oversubscription criteria, there are potential implications, both in terms of financial cost to the Council, but also to our vulnerable communities. And I can give a bit more detail about that in response to the questions. Furthermore, given the scale of the consultation required, this would not be possible in time for the current admission round if it's considered appropriate at all. So the most significant issue really in relation to ensuring first preferences are met in admissions is not the oversubscription criteria, but it's the availability of places where needed to meet demand. And that's specifically the case with in-year transfers. A transformation strategy is currently underway to identify the right schools in the right places. And this highlights that demand for school places and aims to achieve correct catchment boundaries to minimise oversubscription in schools. Decreasing oversubscription will reduce the need to use any criteria, and the forum felt that the oversubscription itself, rather than the criteria, is the issue that needs to be addressed. So, following careful consideration of all the facts available, the forum considers the current arrangements to be equitable and most suitable to meet local need. So I won't go through the detail on the legal implications because that's there to be read, and the background papers also. But if you don't mind, I'll answer the questions now in relation to the members of the public, and then that will provide that additional information. And obviously, if there's any further questions after that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kate. Thank you very much.
Okay, so in terms of grateful to you for submitting in good time, so we were able to formulate a response. I think it's really important just to give an overview. First of all, is we absolutely want to offer families their first preference, and we do not want to separate siblings. That's a key priority for us, is meeting parental preference. We're about providing good education for children, and we want the best for every child. We believe that our arrangements offer the best chance for the highest number of applicants in achieving their first preference. We've undertaken modelling on other suggested arrangements, which confirms our thinking that the current arrangements offer the best chance to families of gaining their first preference and staying with siblings. We've heard the concerns from a small number of families, and we absolutely recognise that admission arrangements can be a really anxious time. The further review and revised modelling consider these representations, but the findings of these, along with our consistent year-on-year high first preference rate and very low encatchment refusal rate, confirms our belief that the long-standing and legally compliant arrangements are the most equitable. So in response to the first question, I've answered them slightly differently because they came in a different order, but the question from yourself, Mrs. Field, around keeping family units together and looking for I think so I'm just going to check the phrase you used was around keeping the family unit together. So we absolutely agree. Keeping siblings together is really important, and that's why our second main oversubscription criteria after catchment is sibling, and this criteria gives priority to all siblings, and there's a definition of siblings in our information for parents booklet, not just to those living in catchment. We believe this also supports our aim to meet parental preference wherever possible and not separate siblings when an older sibling is already attending the school. This applies whether the family live in catchment or not. So prioritising siblings in catchment does not prevent the separation of non-catchment siblings, which we would also like to avoid wherever possible. All children living in catchment get priority within the oversubscription criteria, and this by default includes those with siblings. However, we also recognise that families come in very many different forms, and we would not wish to unfairly penalise firstborn or only children. Our data modelling indicates that if we change the policy to the suggested criteria, this would disadvantage other families. And given that the instances of refusal for siblings in catchment is extremely low, so I just remind you that's 3 in 30,000 over the last 6 years, of which 2 were then subsequently offered places, so effectively 1 child in 30,000, who also had the right to have consideration by the independent appeal panel. We don't consider that introducing a criteria that risks penalising another group is appropriate. And our equality impact assessment screening again suggests that changing the criteria will have an impact on other groups, potentially those who are more vulnerable. And we have to recognise that every family will be treated, will be different, and that there are numerous reasons why a single child family should not be treated less favourably than families with more than 1 child. I recognise some of the information you gave about the potential distress, but that was a hypothetical scenario. It hasn't happened because the places did become available. So, sorry, the scenario around where you were explaining about having to pick up at different times didn't happen because the place became available. Yeah. Okay. So in relation then to the second question, they're your two questions, so I'll answer those. So I think it's really important. This is the question around the policy separating siblings, and the question during the review, what consideration has been given to the negative impact that it has on the older siblings in attendance at the school. So I think it's really important to note, first of all, that the policy does not force primary age siblings to be separated. In fact, it's quite the opposite, as evidenced by our very high first acceptance rate and very low refusal rate for siblings in catchment. So again, that's 0.01%, with the actual percentage being even lower as the children were then subsequently offered places. So there are very low instances of refusal for siblings in catchment, and we recognise that on that very rare occasion it can cause distress, and our independent appeals process allows for that consideration of individual circumstance to be reviewed. We don't agree with the suggestion that an impact on sibling refusal will always be greater than the impact on a single child. We don't think we can ever assume to know any family or individual child's circumstances, or assume that the refusal will be less distressing because a child is an only child or a firstborn. We recognise that refusals are distressing, and our policy is designed to minimise refusal wherever possible and to always meet parental preference. And this is consistently achieved between 97 and 90% of our applicants every year. There was a question around whether we undertook an impact assessment on the siblings who were already in the school and on non-sibling groups when undertaking the review. So we have undertaken equality impact assessment screening in relation to our current arrangements to consider any negative impact on groups who are considered under the Equality Act. So siblings are not considered under the Act as a protected group in themselves unless they have a protected characteristic. And this also applies to non-siblings. So we consider the individual impact on all protected groups. So it's not for us, we believe, to define what constitutes a family unit. What we recognise is there are many different types of family, all of which have value, and one type of family unit should not necessarily take preference over another family unit, and neither should firstborn or single children be intentionally disadvantaged, which we believe the suggested change to the arrangements seems to do. So correctly identify that we use distance as a tie break, and distance is a factual, unique and non-judgmental criteria. You can only have one distance. You could have two refusals, both of whom have a sibling. So we always aim to meet family preferences, but in the very unusual case that we're not able to, we do need to have a non-discriminatory and unique tie break. We also recognise there's a higher rate of refusals of siblings who are not in catchment, and that's often because the older siblings have been able to gain a place outside a catchment, but in subsequent years places are not available. So that's due to parental preference for a school outside the designated catchment area. And then finally, the third question, there was a lot of information around the criteria and some comments, which I know the panel have seen and had copies, so I'll just provide the response to that. So we talked about the group being, the question was about the group being most negatively affected by the arrangements as being the elder siblings already in attendance at the school. So firstly, we would disagree with the statement in relation to siblings, because in relation to siblings in catchment, due to the point which has already been made, it's only affected 3 children in the last 6 years, of which 2 went on to secure a place. So we couldn't agree that they're the most affected group. Secondly, if we were to take the view that it is the older siblings who are most negatively affected by the policy, we would then have to take into account non-catchment siblings, which are actually a higher instance of refusal. The proposed amendment would have no impact on this group, as it only provides priority for in-catchment children, whereas our current arrangements give priority to all siblings, whether they're in the catchment or otherwise, to support our priority really of keeping families together. Part of the additional review of the admission arrangements was to link with other local authorities in Wales who have the oversubscription criteria that's been suggested. These conversations have confirmed that levels of the refusal are similar or higher than those in Swansea, but just that they impact a different group of children. We believe our arrangements best suit Swansea and our unique demography. The arrangements are legal and they are compliant, and they're continually agreed via an annual consultation. The member of the public's proposed change to the arrangements would result in children without siblings being unable to secure places in their catchment or next nearest school. This would increase journey times for those children and likely require single-use taxis for long distance, as it would be the children living in our most rural communities affected. So, for example, a child without a sibling living in Rostilly, other remote parts of Gower, North Gower, Velindre, the Old Clew Valley area, would be negatively impacted by this. As a city of sanctuary, we're also concerned the proposed plan could impact our asylum and refugee communities who move into our area and are unlikely to have existing siblings in the school. There seems to be an assumption that every family has a similar situation, but we know from processing in excess of 8,000 admission applications a year, there are very many different family arrangements and situations. And we believe our current arrangements give the best possible chance to every family to achieve the school placement that they prefer. The proposed change, the suggestion is that it would be welcomed by all stakeholders, although there isn't any evidence of that or the potential repercussions for other families. There seems to include an assumption that there's no impact on children who do not have siblings attending the school, as they have no pre-existing ties to the school. But we would believe that there are numerous reasons why children without siblings in the school would be just as in need of a place in their local school. And this list includes, but is absolutely not exhaustive, children who may have a specific medical need, a parent may have a specific medical need, previous siblings may have left the school, but the family knows the school well. There may be cousins, non-sibling family members attending the school who provide that network, childcare arrangements, an only child's relationship with friendship groups within the school and their local community, the opportunity for firstborn children to secure a place so the whole family remains in the community, a lack of available transport, family members working at the schools, families arriving from overseas and needing to build local connections, and parental preference for a specific school. And 8,000 applications, we see numerous reasons. So, in summary, really, we strongly believe that our current arrangements are not only legal and compliant, but also provide the best and most equitable opportunities for children in Swansea to attend their preferred school. And we absolutely recognise refusal is distressing, and it's something that we want to avoid at all costs. And we believe our current policy supports this. And that's really concludes the matter.
Great, thank you very much, Kate. And I can see there are a number of hands gone up in the room. Angela first. There we are, Angela.
Do you also recognise that the vast majority of people wouldn't have the courage to actually come here and fight their corner also? And we've already got quite a few over there and quite a few letters in support. Do you recognise that and take that on board? I know you spoke about 99% of people, they actually wouldn't come here and fight their cause also.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'm really concerned about is some of our more vulnerable families. So those families who would absolutely be less perhaps confident, able, or even know that these processes exist. So yeah, absolutely right. And we'll share a report this evening as well around our support for inclusion strategy and vulnerable learners. And for us, the admissions team sits within the Vulnerable Learners Service, and we're very much about ensuring equity for all learners. So we have to have policies that are as fair and equitable as they can be. And we know by looking at the information that we have that we would be disadvantaging some families if we were to change to this criteria.
Okay, Will.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for allowing me to speak at the meeting today. Thanks for the report, and very lengthy. I'm sure you need a glass of water after that. It's quite a long one. And thanks also to the public for coming in and making their opinions heard. I think looking at the data, you said it's such a small amount of people that are affected by this, but I've been contacted by 5 separate families in the last 6 months
in one ward.
And we're hearing from parents in this school, and I'm only familiar with my ward. So my first worry is where and how we're collecting this data. Is it only at appeal that you hear about this? Because if I'm a parent with a child in a catchment, and that I'm aware of this policy, I therefore am not taking it any further, because that's the rule, that's the way it is. So how would you even know about that? So to quote those figures, I am confused as how you know those numbers, because how could you? Okay, that's my first question. And could I ask two questions and then ask a separate one later? So the other thing is, when you say you were a long list of the disadvantages that other people would be affected by should this proposal come into place, and all of those disadvantages are equally disadvantageous, is that a word, to the people that we're talking about. So by trying to say that these people will be impacted, it would be different people, you're correct, but the disadvantage is still the same on the other group, if that makes sense. So I don't know how, you're right to bring it up and mention it, but it's still the disadvantage just transferred to a different person.
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't make any difference, if you know what I mean. So there's a long list of disadvantages, but I don't see how that's the thing. So if you could just answer the question, please, on the other data and how you do get those numbers firstly. Thank you.
Sure. If I just come back on your last question first, well, if that's okay. So in terms of the disadvantages, so yes, absolutely, but siblings do get a priority in our criteria. So siblings who live in catchment are already covered in the catchment criteria. And then the second criteria after that is siblings. So siblings already have priority in our criteria. What we don't have is that additional criteria, which has sibling and catchment first. So what this change proposed would be to create a further disadvantage for non-siblings. In relation to the data question, so we have a huge amount of data on school admissions. So every year, every parent who wants to apply for a place has to submit an application form. That application form includes a raft of relevant information that we ask for, which includes addresses, details of siblings. We then go through a very extensive process of cross-referencing all of that information. So I should say, if a school's not oversubscribed, then because we operate a parental preference system, then we allocate those places if we know that there's no issue with oversubscription. When there's an issue with oversubscription, we have to meticulously go through every single application. We have to check details around addresses, around whether siblings are currently on roll, what year group siblings are in, for example. So our information for parents booklet is very clear. But a sibling is school age, so statutory school age, so up to year 11. So if parents are putting applications in quoting sibling, but the sibling is in the sixth form, then that would knock out our sibling criteria. So we hold a high level of data and information in relation to every single year group and every single oversubscription area that we do. We know that if we have to go to independent appeal, we have to be absolutely robust in our final decision making. And because we have a policy of not wishing to refuse any child at any point, we need to be absolutely certain that we've made the right decision. That data then is held for
I think it's 15 years.
15 years. So we can go back and we can track that data back for every year of entry. So we know we have some schools that are, traditionally year on year oversubscribed or very close to being oversubscribed. So we start working on those almost immediately. There are instances of sibling refusal, and I think that they are what you're probably experiencing is siblings who have been refused where the older child has had a place but the family don't live in catchment or no longer live in catchment. So that would probably be the okay, well, if you've got them, give us, we will take the names. Yeah, this instance is in catchment, but those places became available. So if you've got specific names, please share them and we can track those back. But we have a level of confidence that we have a very high individual pupil level data on every child that is refused, because we cannot take a case to an independent appeal if we haven't done our due diligence and done our work correctly. And so that information is there.
And one question then, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just another follow up then. Obviously, Swansea and Neath, Mr. Field said at the start of the meeting, was the only authorities that do this in the UK. You mentioned that Swansea is different, whether that be geographically. I struggle to see that Swansea is unique from every other county in the whole of the UK. And I don't see how, if we're the only two authorities doing this out of how many hundred, well, however many authorities there are in the whole of the UK, that does confuse me. The second thing I wanted to just note is obviously Welsh Government policy, safe routes to school, walking. We're trying to encourage walking. We're trying to encourage, we've got a climate emergency, all those things. By not accepting this policy, you are surely increasing journey times because people are doing 2 school runs instead of 1. So it becomes a point where, for just the examples we've heard here today, is that they won't be able to walk to school. So they'd have to drive to one, drive to the other, drive back. So, I mean, that's just one example, but I'm sure there's lots. So I just wanted to know, firstly, how Swansea's different, and have you thought about the transport implications of this and how it fits around policy, Swansea government and council? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So, just a couple of points. Sorry, just one further follow-up. My colleague has just reminded me that some of the representations we've had around sibling refusals have been hypothetical. So people have raised the concern saying this could happen. So I think when you talk about those instances that you've had, then they haven't actually happened yet. So I think our data, that in relation to the data question, so that people are saying this might happen to us, but our data is telling you what actually has happened. So that's just to make that point. In terms of the question about Swansea being unique, I think my point is that every local authority is unique. I'm not suggesting that everywhere else is the same and Swansea is different. What I'm suggesting is that every local authority area has its own unique demography and its own unique set of circumstances, and our criteria designed to meet our set of circumstances. Swansea has certain features. We've got areas of rurality, but we're not a purely rural local authority. We've got a heavy city centre, highly populated, dense area, and then we've got kind of areas on the periphery as well. So what I'm meaning by that comment is that Swansea has its own unique demographic. Other authorities absolutely have their own unique demographics.
Yeah, if I could just, sorry.
Is that okay? Do you mind? And then the third was around the routes to school, the walking routes. So yeah, absolutely, that's something we want to avoid at all costs. Under these proposals, a child who lived closer to the school would be refused over a child who had a sibling attending the school. So actually, we'd be asking families to travel further under these proposals. If you look at Appendix B, the modelling, what you'll see is in both of those cases where there's been sibling refusals, if we'd have applied the criteria that's been suggested, the children who would have ended up being refused were children who lived closer to the school but didn't have a sibling attending. Well, the children who lived closer would be refused. I mean, the distances are fairly small, but yeah, the issue would be the same. The issue is that we don't have, in some cases, enough places for enough children, so there will always be a refusal, and the child who is refused will always be faced with a journey time that is longer than we would hope. What our current arrangements do is make sure that the child who is closest to the school is the child who gets the place when it comes to a tie-break situation, rather than the child with the sibling, because the tie-break is distance.
Yes, well, sorry, it was going back to Swansea being unique in its demographic, and I don't doubt that it is, but obviously a lot of cities would argue exactly the same. So I'm just wondering, when you had the chat with the other councils, who obviously all have different to us, what were the implications that were discussed that were really, I suppose, hugely tie-breaking for we will stick to what we've always done and we will not consider this new change to our policy?
So we have considered it. I think we've given it really serious consideration. I don't think there's any suggestion that we haven't given it huge consideration, and we've modelled potential scenarios. When we've spoken to other local authorities, what they've shared with us is it hasn't actually made a massive difference in terms of their refusals. But what our modelling tells us is there are some potential really concerning situations that could occur. Swansea, for example, I talked about being a city of sanctuary. If we're a city with a very high level of internal and mobility. So we have lots of families who come into Swansea at different points in the year. By default, those families won't have children already in school, so they'll be applying from a position of disadvantage. We also have some quite extreme distances. So I used the example of Rossilli, and we modelled that. So we looked at, and these are hypothetical scenarios, okay? But you've given us hypothetical scenarios as a chat. So in the hypothetical scenario where you have a child living in Rossilli and their nearest school is full of children who live in the catchment and have siblings, and that child in Rossilli is an only child or a firstborn child, if that school is full, and if the same applies to the next nearest school, we've got potential scenario, we've got children coming from very rural, isolated areas to go to schools perhaps on the other side of the authority. So, it's not always as straightforward as one arrangement works well, because it works well for one family. There will always be a knock-on, and what we have to do is look at what all of those potential repercussions are and try and find an arrangement that works as best as possible for every family possible. I think, just to reiterate that point, our overwhelming desire is to give everyone the place they want. That's absolutely the position we're coming from. We don't want to cause any distress or have any refusals, but we have to be fair and consider all families in all communities.
Sorry, yeah, if I can come in, in terms of the, it's not a matter of sticking to what we've always done, because of the admissions forum, when it looked at this, there are other people that were at that meeting, there was a very open mind about, well, let's get a system that works. And I think a combination of the data that Kate has referred to and the modelling of other scenarios led the admissions forum to the conclusion that they came to. So it's not a matter of, we've always done it this way, let's carry on. There was a fairly open and robust discussion at that meeting.
Sorry, any other questions, Francesca, then? And
Bob, just two questions. Hopefully I won't take up much more of your time. Two things. When Councillor Smith was just talking then, obviously we've talked about hypothetical situations, and thankfully, some of these cases might have been resolved the time they started the academic year. How long are those parents in limbo for? Because I appreciate, thankfully, that that issue has been resolved the time they started the academic year, but I can imagine, and I'm probably going to be in the same, hopefully I won't be in the same situation. I've got a son already in the local primary school. Hopefully he will get into that same primary school, but I could imagine if I'm told, actually, X school is full, I'm going to have to go to another one because a child might be that much closer. How long are parents in limbo for? Because I appreciate it might not happen, but it is that uncertainty, and I can imagine that causes the most stress, actually.
Yeah, sure. So offer day is 1st of March. So that's when everybody hears. If parents don't get their first preference at that point, then that's when they can start to trigger the appeals process. We run our waiting list from the 1st of March. So we ask parents to, particularly in our oversubscribed schools, and we chase them. We ask, families to confirm that they want to take up the place. If we get any people declining, then we offer off the waiting list straight away. Appeals window, there's a period of time when people can put an application, put a letter of appeal in, but we keep that open. Really, it's not strict, and the appeals are generally heard towards the end of May, June, because we have there's a statutory arrangement that we have to put in place for an appeal. It's a legal process, so it has to be convened properly. But then families tend to hear, as a result of the appeal, depending on the number of appeals, either on the same day, or if we have multiple appeals for a single school, which is more common in Year 7, it can be at the end of that appeal week. So it is a period of time, and we recognise that's distressing. It's not something that we would ever choose to happen. The admissions team are on hand to kind of support people, look at alternative options. And I think the other point that's really important is, we do always offer alternative options. We're not saying that people have to take them, but it's about making sure that families can have as much information as they want. So sometimes that's perceived as we're telling you to go somewhere else. That's not the case at all. What we're saying is, this is what is available to you at the moment. This is what you could choose to do, but it's all about, the options that are available.
I just think that's probably where that uncertainty comes from, isn't it? And I appreciate, you're the legal statutory duty, but I think it's that you're in that limbo from March till whatever time is. If it's June, that seems like an eternity, and it's that uncertainty. And if you're like myself, who rely on parents and the third generation to come in and pick up the kids, I can imagine that's where it's that uncertain time. And then secondly, so thank you for that. Sorry, going back, if the child is refused a place, is it made known to them about the appeal process? Is that information given straight away? It is.
Comes in the refusal letter.
Okay.
It's detailed in the letter.
And just lastly, out of interest more than anything, is, and I know Councillor Thomas mentioned that before, that we're only one of 2 authorities in Wales. Is there a reason behind that, why we categorise things slightly different?
Yeah, mercifully, I don't go back that far, so I don't.
I'm not suggesting you do.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I'm afraid it's, I don't know, but we think it works well. We consult on it annually. So although it's been in place for a very long time, it is refreshed and reviewed on an annual basis. And I think we review the arrangements, but we also review the information for parents booklet annually, and that's the supplementary guidance that really helps parents. And some of the points you make are really important. And when we hear things that worry people, we put that information in to offer reassurance.
Sorry, Chair, if somebody's speaking, we can't hear.
There's a Welsh Government guidance book that says that sort of local authorities should make efforts to keep siblings together, will help children get to school. And I think at some point, Swansea has made a mistake, being totally honest, and we've just run with it. Hasn't been picked up, hasn't been raised. It happens very infrequently, like you say, so it hasn't been made an issue. And I think just now it has been flagged. Now is the opportunity you have looked at it. I'm really grateful that people have looked at it, but I just feel that although it's a very small number of people affected and there's a lot of work to change it, really, as a parent who's been through it, and I do know other parents who have gone through it, when it does happen, it is devastating. And I don't agree with your report about other people will be disadvantaged. Quite a lot of that is unsubstantiated, with all due respect. I think that really, you said the numbers are identical, but the impact is drastically more severe on siblings. So I want to say thank you very much for everything, but as a parent, I'm really just implore everyone else as a parent to think, if you're in catchment, your child gets into a school, you want every other child to go to that school. You want a shared educational journey. You don't want the heartbreak and the upset of splitting them up. And as a parent, if anyone's honest and looks beyond the politics and the work involved, everyone would agree with that. And that's all I'd ask people to think of. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just on unsubstantiated, I've got to say that that's not accurate, because we process over 8,000 applications every year, and with this report and all of the information that we're provided is based on those applications. So we physically see 8,000 applications from families. So I think that's not accurate.
Sorry, I was primarily referring to the vulnerable people being more at risk. I can't see how vulnerable people, which I totally agree with, need to be protected. I can't see how they're adversely affected by this any more than they may be advantaged by it. I think that's a little bit of scaremongering, in all due respect.
Great. Thank you all. I can't see any other hands up. So thank you very much for obviously coming in, and obviously the panel will note your concerns, and thanks to Kate as well. Okay, but thank you very much indeed. And thanks, and thank you, Kate. Thank you very much. And yeah, great. Okay, can we move on? The next item on the agenda is the strategy for poverty proofing the school day. And Robert, I think you're...
Yeah, I'll just again
Kelly,
introduce the outcome and then hand over. Thank Kerry and the other officers for preparing the report. Members will be aware here from previous discussions on this committee and other fora about the way the Swansea Council is trying to minimise the impact of poverty on our children, on learners across the city and county. It's a matter of trying to ensure that we have as level a playing field as we can and I think the report outlines a number of the measures that have taken place to help learners and to try and ensure that support is available, and perhaps as importantly that people know about the support that is available and how to access it. So perhaps Kelly, if you can take us through the report and then we come back at the end, Chair.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. And thanks for letting me present this report. It is something that I'm quite passionate about myself, and I do represent the Council on the Poverty Truth Commission as well. So thank you, and I hope you can consider the information provided and give your views at the end. So if I take you through the report, you've got it in front of you there. I'll just highlight some key areas as we go through. So under paragraph 1.1, the City and County Swansea's wellbeing objectives that you'll be aware of do include improving education and skills and tackling poverty and enabling communities so that every person in Swansea can achieve their potential. So obviously that will include young people. So paragraph 1.3 outlines that the WIMD indications look at the lowest super output areas, and what we're saying is that 11.5% of those areas in Swansea are in the most deprived 10% in the whole of Wales. So under paragraph 1.4, it outlines our last count on free school meals in our schools in Swansea, with our primary schools ranging from 2.09% to 69.78%, and secondary from 5.61% to 51%. So there's quite a big variation there in our schools across the council. And the Education Directorate aims to raise the attainment of children and young people from those low-income households by reducing the barriers that they often face. So I'm going to go through a few of the strategies that we've got here. So the first one is Pupil Development Grant. So this is the grant that's provided by the Welsh Government to our schools. It's currently £1,150 per learner with free school meal eligibility. Just to note that is actual eligibility and not to be confused with universal free school meals, which have just rolled out in our schools. So if you're on universal free school meals, it's different to the actual eligibility, which is income driven on free school meals. So the grant can be used for a number of areas that are outlined in paragraph 2.1 in the report. Under paragraph 2.2, this is going back to 2019. The Policy Development Committee at the time supported recommendations regarding the use of PDG, but they still stand to this day. And they include things such as tracking the academic progress of this group of pupils and undertaking annual reviews of the intervention strategies that are in place, just to make sure that what we're doing is actually working and is helping to support those learners. Paragraph 2.3 is noting that our school improvement advisors will go out to each school in their autumn term support visit, and they will also discuss with schools how they are supporting the recommendations on how they're using their pupil development grant. And schools also have access to a flow chart that I've put as an appendix as well to help them check that they can use that pupil development grant in line with the terms and conditions of the grant. Paragraph 2.5 is showing the range of actual financial allocations to schools in the financial year 24-25, and you can see that there's a great range of allocations going out there to individual schools. This year, the Welsh Government did give us an additional part of the grant, a smoothing grant, and that was there to ensure that no school lost funding from the previous year, and that's obviously helped to maintain interventions that schools are running using their PDG. So paragraph 2.6 is looking at some of the interventions that schools can use, and just noting really that some are more successful than others, and the interventions that are used don't often have to be expensive. They can be quite small things that can sort of really have that huge impact on the pupils there. So they're listed under paragraph 2.6. We've also got some training packages that can be delivered, and I've listed some under 2.7 there. And importantly, families can also access support directly from the grant. And 2.8 is outlining those, such as free school meals, free preschool childcare clubs, free after-school clubs, free or subsidised school trips, free school snacks, and the provision of IT equipment. So 2.9 is just highlighting that the impact of PDG can be seen through improved engagement, fewer social services referrals, improved attendance, improved attainment, and importantly, a better relationship between parents and the school. Section 3 is looking at the rollout of universal free school meals that I mentioned earlier. So the Welsh Government asked local authorities to roll this out to all primary school pupils by 2024, which is something that we've achieved. And the commitment to do that was in response to the rising cost of living pressures on families, and gave ambitions including things like tackling child poverty and ensuring no child goes hungry in school. So as I mentioned in paragraph 3.2, we have rolled this out across the whole of Swansea, and what we said we would do in Swansea is we would roll out one full year group at a time, so every child in every school was receiving that sort of benefit at the same time for their year group. Under 3.3, we had to make some changes to accommodate those increasing numbers. So we have had to look at things like changes to the menu that's been on offer in our primary schools, for example, and we're looking at less labour-intensive menus to be able to deliver to the increasing number of pupils taking that free school meal. Under 3.4, we have had to look at the equipment in some of our schools, and we have had to upgrade electrical systems in some schools to be able to accommodate additional things like electric ovens. So we have had a grant from the Welsh Government to enable us to do this. However, because we did have to do some of this work, it has delayed some of the rollout. We have got under 3.55 schools still remaining with major capital works required to enable them to fully roll out properly the universal free school meal offer. And we are working with those as soon as we possibly can. But what we've looked at is the alternative solutions for those 5 schools to be able to the year 6s to get their delivery through now. And we've had things like sort of splitting the lunch breaks temporarily for those schools, so they've got a different number of settings, or perhaps some children having to eat elsewhere other than the dining centre temporarily. Under paragraph 3.7, at the moment we're looking at an average uptake of 66%, and we are continuing to investigate why the take-up isn't higher in some of our schools. A lot of what we found are things, it's sort of just like custom and practice for the learners to be bringing in perhaps a packed meal every day. So we are trying to work with those individual schools and families to try and get them to take up the entitlement that's theirs. Under 3.8, it should be noted that we are continually reminding parents to apply for their free school meal eligibility as well. It is a bit complicated for primary school parents now because they get the free meal, they don't understand why perhaps they have to apply. So we just try to keep reminding them that it's a benefit to their school because they can access the PDG grant and other areas of funding, but also the parents then can have access to some of the things like the reduced trips, etc. In the school, and also the school uniform grant, which is something I'll cover a bit later on as well. So section 4, the cost of the school day. We do frequently remind schools to consider the cost of the school day when they are sort of entering into different initiatives and putting costs on parents. And we can tell the schools are listening if things are changing in our school settings. We did run a conference on the poverty agenda in May of 2024, and we outlined some good practice there and provided information and support and outlined resources that were available, including highlighting the Welsh Government school uniform and appearance policy guidance. Again, uniforms a bit later on in the report. 4.2, schools have been offered training as well through Partner Erith, which is our regional school improvement service, on the cost of the school day. And the training there will look at things like, schools should consider the cost of trips, the cost of non-uniform days and dress-up days, and link into some of Kate's work as well. Sort of those can also affect attendance in some of our schools where parents can't, afford to provide the costume or whatever's been provided for the day. And then access to technology for homework. Interestingly as well, education managers, we also had training after I'd written this report last week on poverty awareness as well. Section 5 is looking at the school uniform and the grant that's available there. So again, the Welsh Government had issued this guidance on their appearance policy, and we can see schools are taking this into account when they're reviewing their policies. So the guidance includes things like having basic items and colours that can be bought from multiple retail suppliers at reasonable prices, avoiding high-cost items such as blazers and caps, avoiding colours, colour variations and style for different year groups, and considering the cost and availability of non-standard sizes, amongst other things. So the school uniform grant provided by the Welsh Government is now called the Schools Essential Grant.
It's available for children and young people who are in statutory ages of education and have that free school meal eligibility. Also looked after children and also those with no cost to public funds. The funding is £125 per learner, apart from year 7, which is £200, and it can be spent on a variety of items. It's not just your typical uniform, and I've listed those for you under paragraph 5.4. We have got an online system that we use for parents to apply for the grant, and then the money can go directly into their bank account, and it's usually a few days after they apply. But if a parent can't use the system, we can work through the schools to make sure the school can help to get those purchases through on their behalf. I did mention earlier about, universal free school meals can complicate eligibility and people not being sure what they're eligible for, but there's also transitional protection on free school meals as well. So for secondary school pupils who have this transitional protection, they also can't apply for the uniform grant. So, we do support, we've got a hotline that we do support parents with when they are trying to apply and feel they should be eligible, but they can't get that money through. However, most schools do offer, under paragraph 5.7, a recycling service of some sort. So I would think that probably all our schools would now have something where if a family is struggling, they can access a recycled uniform. Sorry, I've wasted that pretty quickly, but that's my report.
Thanks very much, Kelly. Pretty comprehensive report. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Really, just out of interest, with the school meals that you mentioned, that the average is about 66%, and why isn't there more of an uptake? Have we looked into why there's not as much uptake as we hope? Because I appreciate it's cost a lot of money to put the infrastructure in and obviously to provide that meal. Is there any sort of data as to why there's not as much uptake?
Yeah, so we are looking at individual schools at the moment, and we've looked at is the menu sufficient? Is there waste? Is the food waste? The children not fancying what's on the menu there. But what we seem to be finding is it's just sort of like a tradition that children take a packed lunch in, and sometimes like a friendship group might all take a packed lunch in together. So we're just trying to break that cycle now and trying to promote that meal. It is an entitlement for everybody who's got a child in primary school, so we want them to take it up.
I just wondered if it was worth engaging with the children, because if they're like my 9-year-old, that's as long as it's like, beige in colour, he will eat it. Anything different, he won't. So I just wondered, is it worth engaging with the children to see what, maybe, encouraging them, because we're all about the healthy well-being these days, and getting them interested in, eating good quality, hopefully locally produced food, which is a big thing I like promoting. Is it worth engaging with the children to see what they could be opening up the floodgates, I appreciate, but what would they like to eat?
Yeah, we have got plans to survey our schools, and we want to do just that really, and ask if there are schools where we can engage with the children and with the parents. There's a little bit of change going on at the moment, obviously with the final rollout of the universal free school meals, and there's also the Welsh Government introduced a new health eating guidelines as well, so we might need to change the menu offer as well to suit that. So we're hoping we can do that early in 2025.
Fine, thanks. I can see James and then Mike, but could I say I went to Gorsingham Primary School. I think I've told Robert before. We used to get beetroot and gravy with the meat, and gosh, I tell you what, I still like beetroot amazingly. Yeah, so I don't know if that'd be top on people's agenda. James and Mike.
Yeah, there's just two questions really. I mean, the first one relates particularly around sections 2.6 to 2.9 about the pupil deprivation grant. Obviously, this is quite a high level report, so it's fair enough that some of the ideas there have been bulleted. But there's also a kind of a comment that some things are more effective than others, and some things are actually quite cost effective. Was just to understand, is that sort of sharing and learning really moving across the different schools, and what's being done to make sure that something that really works well and is cheap in one school is being shared with another? And then the second one was just about section 3.8 and relates into section 5.5, where you're talking about the free school meal applications. Obviously, the universal free school meal, brilliant, and I firmly support it. But there obviously is an implication if the free school meal applications are dropping in other areas. And is there sort of a lot of work going on to ensure that those people who are eligible are still making whatever adjustments are needed, whatever applications are needed? Thank you.
Great. Mike, do you want to come in now?
Yeah,
And
if I
then
may, thank you.
Kelly can do the two.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks, Kelly. It's a really brilliant report and wonderful to hear and see the impact that these things are having with children. Two brief questions. Clearly, the free school meals is something which is available during the time that the children are in school. How is it kind of linked up then with other council policies to provide food and meals during holiday times? And the second question then is that, and I think we all agree that the challenge with many parents, isn't it, is actually sort of them being aware of the fact that these grants, for example, a Schools Essentials grant is available. How is that undertaken in terms of, do the schools, for example, take responsibility for targeting those children who are on EFSM or LAC or whatever, or is there another way of it being brought to their attention?
I shall try and remember them all because I haven't got a pen. Yeah, so the first question about sharing good practice. Yes, we do share good practice amongst our schools. And we mentioned under 2.3 about the school improvement advisors. They'll go out and they've got a checklist to go out and just see what the schools are spending their money on. So they're the main conduit, but we've also got our newsletter. And I know Dave was next to me as well, sort of when we do speak to our schools and have conferences and things like that, we can share the good practice through that process. You mentioned about the trying to think now what the second, about the making sure parents pick up the actual entitlement. I think, Mike, you covered that as well. So we do send out really frequently to our schools for them to send information out to their parents. The Welsh Government also send us posters and other things that we can share with our schools so they can pop those, in their sort of correspondence to parents. And we also use our social media channels as well, our Facebook accounts and Twitter accounts and things like that to share that with our schools. Sorry, there was another question I didn't write down.
Yeah, it's
Mike,
just the provision of meals during holiday times,
in the
linking in
holidays.
with other council actions.
Yeah, so during the school holidays, there is another grant that's available for food and fun for schools that they can apply for. It previously was limited to schools with more than 16% free school meals, but I think this year the Welsh Government are going to be trying to encourage other schools if they wanted to try and run that holiday programme. It has been, successful in the schools that have run that. It is for a 2-week period in the holidays. The council also has other sort of food holiday sort of schemes as well, run through another directorate that are available for community groups and the like to be able to bid for food for children who are in disadvantaged areas as well.
Yeah, just in response to James's question, that was one of the recommendations of what was then the Policy Development Committee, that good practice in using the PDG should be shared as far as possible, that we share the learning of each school in how they use the PDG. So that was certainly behind our thinking, and I mean, it's something that is being introduced and rolled out across the whole of Swansea, because we don't want schools having to reinvent the wheel in this, and it's how they do it, what's effective in different contexts, and it's a continual learning process.
Okay, great. Thank you, Robert. We've now got Beth and then Yvonne.
So mine's more of a comment really rather than a question. So my youngest is in primary still. She's stopped having dinners because she said the portion sizes are now really small and she's coming home hungry. So she wants packed lunch for that reason. So just to float that one with you. And the other one was, so my eldest has just started comp. She's in year 7. But she's really enjoyed this whole process. She's had somebody in talking to her and about poverty and she's really enjoyed that. So just to say that that's working well for my daughter anyway. But she did sort of pick up some stuff about period poverty, and there was kind of quite a lot of debate about the fact that you had to have 10p to get a pad out of the machine, because there weren't free ones there. There were only free sort of tampons and not pads. So that was just another comment about, it could that be looked at really.
Do you want to answer that one, for that question first, and then it's Yvonne?
Yeah, there is a period dignity grant that schools access. So so I would like to hope that those free products are available to all learners, and it should be that they can just get them without having to ask as well. So I'll be reminding schools then on that should be the case. Thank you for highlighting that to me.
Okay, great, thanks, Yvonne. You're on silent, Yvonne.
Sorry. Okay, so I was just saying thanks for the report, but one of the schools I'm governor on, we are having quite a small take-up of the free meals, but the explanation from the head is that the children that don't have it, there's quite a large proportion that don't. It's because they bring packed lunch, which generally is bread and maybe cheese, or just bread and butter, because they don't eat a lot of the cooked meals that's provided. They're not used to it at home, they're not used to it, so they won't even try it. So that is something I think we would need to deal with, get over, in order to have a take-up. It's not always that parents don't know, but the child doesn't want to have what's been offered. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, Joe.
Great, thank you. Kelly,
No, that is interesting to note. I mean, there is usually a choice in the schools. We do normally offer 2 options and a vegetarian / vegan option, and most schools will provide like a sort of a cold, like a packed lunch type meal as well on request. So, but we'll definitely be looking at the menu. Like I said, we're waiting for the health eaters to come in to see what the impact of that will be, and then we'll definitely be reviewing the menu again.
Okay, great, fine, thanks. Could I say a little while ago in Pardon I think Robert and Helen were probably there, and Birch Grove Comprehensive School actually came on and saying what they did, and it was really impressive, and a lot of things that you wouldn't actually think about. And I could have been so impressed, I actually rang the head the next day to say really well done, because a lot of the things you just honestly wouldn't think about. So it was a great case example actually of that. So could I say thank you very much, Kelly? Really important subject that we look after people, and I'd probably suggest they need to have beetroot and gravy, and I think they'll be fine. They'll think of it, they'll all turn out like me. Gosh, there's a thought. Yeah. As we gosh, I turned over the page, then I saw progress with inclusion strategy, and I think Kate would have better fit and to go through it all again. But it's actually a briefing on careers advice in schools, and David, down to you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you some of the careers, advice, information and guidance that our schools undertake as well. So you've got the report in front of you, and I just wanted to take you through the report really and highlight some of the points within that report. So in terms of careers advice in our schools, we would work very closely with the third party, with Careers Wales, who delivers a remit that's set out by Welsh ministers and that provides that impartial advice, information and guidance to young people. I'm pleased to say that Swansea, as a local authority, we have a very good and very strong relationship with Careers Wales, and we work in strong partnership with them. So we know that Careers Wales has this remit from Welsh Government, and we would work alongside them very well. And then to that end, really, Careers Wales puts together a partnership agreement that it has with every one of our secondary schools. This is something that happens across Wales, but within Swansea, that happens with every single school. There's no exception that every school meets with Careers Wales and signs and has this partnership agreement with them. 1.3 just points out to the way in which they work and the way in which we work with Careers Wales. They work with a team around the school approach, where there is a careers advisor that is attached to every secondary school. But there is also a business engagement advisor as well that works across our schools. We've got 2 business engagement advisors, or Bs. I'll talk about them a bit later. We work with them very closely to improve the employer engagement and those activities that happens within schools. And then thirdly as well, Careers Wales has some resource which is resourced regionally, and we support that locally as well within the local authority for careers and work-related experiences, which is a new element of Curriculum for Wales, which is embedded into the curriculum from age 3 upwards, 3 to 16 continuum. And I'm pleased to say on that point as well, we've expanded our resource within the local authority and have a performance specialist within the curriculum team to support with careers and work-related experiences, work very closely with myself and as well with our partners within Careers Wales. So we have that strong support for schools that work with the primary settings as well as our secondary schools and settings as well. So we've got that. So if I take you to point 2, the careers advice, information and guidance, and then I go through to 1 onwards. Firstly, in relation to our careers advisors, our careers advisors are impartial, a professional body as well. They've been trained to level 6 to give that advice and information and guidance to our young people. And 2.2 just points out as well that they work at those key transition points for those young people when they're about to take their choices in year 9, when they're thinking about leaving school in year 11, and the preparation for that in year 10, and then beyond as well in year 12 and 13. 2.3 just points out really that the advice, information and guidance for young people since September 2024, we've gone back to universal support for every young person. So every young person in year 10 and 11 are offered a guidance interview before leaving school. And so that's a difference, so that's a change to what's happened previously, where that support for careers advice was only given to those young people who are perhaps the most vulnerable or the ones that were highlighted as needing the support. So 2.3 points to universal support, and as well as that, a bit of further tailored support for groups that will need that information, advice and guidance in particular. 2.4 just points out that at post-16, the offer of advice and guidance is slightly different. The offer is for those who are identified at risk of not completing their post-16 course of study, or if they self-refer themselves into the careers advisory service themselves. So it's a little bit of sort of the remit that Welsh Government give to our careers advisors and the advisory service. 2.5, I've just pointed out that I talked previously about our relationship with Careers Wales. I meet regularly with our Swansea team manager. We discuss on a regular basis, which would be twice a term. We'll discuss some of the opportunities and challenges that our careers advisors are facing within our schools, and we will look to address some of those challenges perhaps, and we'd look to see what we can do to mitigate against those. There's some figures there in 2.5 as well. So for the academic year 2023-24, our previous academic year, the number of one-to-one interactions across Swansea schools was 5,108, with 296 group sessions that had been delivered. And as I say, that I meet often and regularly with our Swansea team manager, Sian, who oversees the careers advisors across all of our secondary schools. Interesting to note, I think previously I've sat here and talked about our Learner Voice survey within our sixth forms and our post-16 settings schools, sixth forms, and 2.6 just highlights that when we talked to those young people and did those focus groups, the person that the young people spoke about most of to give that advice and guidance, they talked about their parents, their teachers and so on, but the careers advisor came out as very, very strongly as the person who was giving them that direction and pointing them in the advice and guidance that they needed. In addition to that, some of my conversations with the Swansea team manager is making sure that the careers advisors in schools are up to date and are being upskilled on developments that are happening within the city, for example, City Deal as one of the most obvious ones. So in March of this year, seems much longer than that, but it was March of this year, worked with Gower College Swansea to organise professional learning and training event with our careers advisors, introducing them to Swansea-based City Deal and some of the projects that are being developed there. And in December, so next month, the Regional Learning and Skills Partnership are hosting another event for careers advisors to get them upskilled and make sure that they are aware of some of the changes that are happening in terms of our local economy. And then 2.8, the further offer that we have for careers advice and guidance is business engagement advisors. So there's a well-established links with local and national employers. I know we've talked about that before within this forum, and we are aware that Careers Wales, as one of our partners, has a strong network of employers to go into schools and start and talk to schools about that advice and guidance and pointing them in the right direction for that piece of work. And 2.9, just bullet points, some of the activities that the business engagement advisors do with our schools. And then bringing in some of the other support. We know that we've got employer networks within, for example, Gower College, within another organisation, the Bumbles of Honeywood, for example, the Regional Learning and Skills Partnership is another one. And what we are looking to do within the Swansea Skills Partnership, as part of the Swansea Pledge that we've talked about before, is to bring that network of employers together and raise awareness and visibility of that with young people. And perhaps to that end, I'll just add that this morning I had a meeting with Knights Brown, who are doing the Castle Gardens work and have done the sea defences in Mumbles as well, who are very happy and to sign a Swansea Pledge to support and work with our young people and to give that additionality to careers advice and guidance that Careers Wales do themselves. 2.11 just points to 132 employer engagement activities that happened last year. And then 2.12 and 2.13 just give two examples of how employers have worked within our schools as part of the valued partner projects that have worked. So Kia Construction in Bryn Tawy School, and there are some nice web links there if in your own time you'd like to click on those. There's a video on one of them to show some of the work that they've done for Kia Construction, and then Morganstone as well as 2.13. And then moving on to the careers advice that is given through the curriculum. It's a new part of curriculum for Wales. Really exciting to be part of this, especially because it goes right back to primary school as well. And for children, the age of 3, looking how careers and work-related experiences can enhance and support their curriculum. So as that's been embedded into the curriculum, 2.15 just talks through some of the activities and some of the work that careers and work-related experience does within the school. And then 2.16 is something that's quite unique to Swansea, or something we started in Swansea, has been replicated in other local authorities, is we have a careers and work-related experiences network of teachers across our secondary schools, which we hope to expand to our primary schools moving forward. And as well as that, we have Careers Wales representatives, the Regional Learning and Skills Partnership, and Gower College on that group as well. We meet twice a year. We share good practice that is happening across the city. We invite employers in to share what they can offer as well within the city. So that network has grown. It's well attended. and really is working towards a strong collaborative partnership where we are working with each other and schools are sharing what they're doing. Some of the themes in 2.17 is what we've covered during that network over the last few years, really. And within that, schools have access to, there's a link in 2.16, a toolkit and a toolbox. So there's two different documents. The toolbox has got links to, sounds very industry led anyway, doesn't it? Toolkit and a toolbox. But the toolbox has got links to performers and documents that schools can use to start to work towards putting together, if they want to, a careers policy for their school, or a vision statement or a way of working, and a way of working towards how they can embed careers and work-related experiences into their way of working and into their practice. And then 2.18 just points towards, as we started that in Swansea, other local areas are putting together their own networks, and very soon that will be highlighted as good practice in a Careers Wales document to be shared across Wales. So we're quite proud of that. And then 2.19 and 2.20 just points towards how schools, with the support of Careers Wales and ourselves as a local authority, raise the awareness with parents and carers, and that there are newsletters that go out, social media interactions to raise awareness of careers advice and guidance. We know it's not a finished piece of work, and we know it is something that we are still working towards completing. We feel that working with the primary schools now is another piece of the jigsaw we need to put together. We need to work more on, but there is such a lot of good practice across Swansea in terms of our careers advice and guidance. And I've already mentioned the Swansea Pledge and the work that we do within the Swansea Skills Partnership. What we would hope to do is to build those networks of employers together from our different sources to enhance and to grow the provision even more.
Thank you, and really great progress actually. One thing I always like during the course of the year, when you do the entrepreneurship with the primary schools
yes.
in Castle Gardens, because gosh, I tell you, I walk away from there and I think, gosh, what have I bought? I bought this big bag of things. But the funniest one of all was I bought a mug there one day with this pattern on it, and got home. I thought, gosh, I better wash it first. Next time I look, I had this white mug. All the pattern had come off. But so I don't know what sort of business that person will be running, but really good, and they were really engaged. Great. But thank you. Any questions?
Can I just thank David for leading us through the report, and because the whole project, the line of work that he's involved with, the work stream, I mean, it's involves a lot of other people. It involves pulling people together, working with different groups, and I think it is a tribute to the work that's going on here that we've been able. And I also pay tribute to the work that's going on in the Swansea Skills Partnership, because I think that is beginning to show its effectiveness as a way of brokering collaboration and bringing people together, and I think that's an achievement.
Great, fine, thank you, and excellent work. But I always I do enjoy going to that one day, because you as I say, what you come away with, I tell you, yeah. Well, you know what? In my haste, I forgot one of the items on the agenda. The good news is we'll include it for next month, because I'm just mindful of the time. So the only other item on the agenda is the work programme for us to note. And if we could all note that. And other than that is to thank you all very much indeed for your attendance, and quite a marathon tonight. But thank you all for your attendance, and hope to catch up soon. Thank you all.
Good night. Thank you.